We are running a little over. Apologize for that. We had technical difficulties and some other issues, power outage, that sort of stuff. I'm going to turn it over to Ponch Rivera. Ponch, I'll let you introduce yourself, Brian, and bring in your panel. And with that, we're just going to make a transition as soon as you're ready. Thank you.
All right. All right, just a quick sound check. Thumbs up. All right. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Rivera. I go by Ponch. I am the co-creator of the Flow system, along with one of the earlier panelists and one of my civilian mentors, Mr. Nigel Thurlow. Today, I'm here with one of my military mentors to talk about supply chain resilience, mobility, and collaboration, but from a maritime perspective. Now, as a Navy reservist, I know him as Sir, Boss, or Vice Admiral, and this is Vice Admiral McCollum. Now, in response to the accidents we had at sea in 2017, I was part of a Secretary of the Navy team that was charged to go out and understand industry best, good, novel, and emergent practices so we can bring those back into the military and in the Navy specifically to build high-performing teams, build leaders, create a safety culture, and of course, make sense of our environment so we can act in it and capture those leading indicators that will tell us when something is going to fail or for innovation. Now, our guest today is recently completed a 4-year tour as our nation's Navy Reserve Force Chief. He's the 14th Chief of Navy Reserve. He is Vice Admiral McCollum. Now, waiting on his picture here, Vice Admiral McCollum, are you with us? There you are, sir. Great to see you. Great to see you back in with water, and I hope everything's fine and where you are today. Now, sir, I introduced you, and you know, aviators, we like to talk about ourselves, but I want to go ahead and turn it over to you and hear from you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you, Ponch. And first of all, let me thank David Hamilton and the leadership team for putting this forum together. I know I've learned a lot for the pieces that I was able to tune in for. And it's a great forum to collaborate and network, and clearly with a purpose. And just a lot of great work by those who have already spoken, and feel humbled that I've had the opportunity to just take a little bit of everybody's time today for this segment. Yeah, as Ponch mentioned, I just completed the 37 years of service in uniform. Served both in a part-time and a full-time capacity, like most reservists. But then was asked to lead the Reserve Force, where I spent the last 4 years based in Washington, D.C., but with the global responsibility. Most of my time has been in the operational side, surface warfare, that's ships in operations and deployments in support of OIF, EF, and things like that. When I've been out of uniform, I have spent time in supply chain, technology, and international endeavors. And as I wrapped up my tour, as you all know, when COVID hit, that required a unique kind of well, let's just say, as Major General Sharpson talked about, we're in a job to sprint to the end, and we continue to sprint hard to learn about ourselves as a Navy and learn about how to be resilient.
And thank you, sir. So 37 years is a long time. All right, tech difficulties there. Again, sir, 37 years is a great milestone, a great accomplishment. So thank you for your service and your time. So today we're here to talk about resiliency, mobility, collaboration in the context of supply chains from the perspective of a maritime view. So can you give us an update as to what you see as being important and why it matters?
Yeah, well, those, so thanks. Yeah, those three terms, I cannot think of really a more dynamic time when those terms play right in the center line of, at least from the military side of business, as not only what we've been through, but where we're headed. You know, the last 5 years or so, if you looked at the National Defense Strategy and saw really the shift to this competitive landscape that many refer to as great power competition, or the competition on the high seas from a maritime strategy. So it's a shift away from our counterterrorism focus to this this maritime distributed operation focus. And then if you look at what it takes to do that, to focus on what the Navy's best at and what it's mandated to do, you look at shifting to this distributed maritime operations component. And then how do you do it in a full set of collaboration, where we have to bend the curve in so many things from our infrastructure to allow our operational presence. So just a little bit of an endeavor, I think, into the operational Navy, just for the sake. And I'm glad that we're kind of in this segment. Maybe we're talking about the consumers and where we manage risk. General Levy talked about what is our risk posture, and how is the risk? What's the risk proposition of how we meet the mandate of national security? We could talk about effectiveness or efficiency. From an operator's view, it does index on effectiveness. And when you think about the Navy, it's about freedom of the seas, and it's about forward presence, and free trade. Most people know that 90% of what we see in our homes and in our businesses is, has some association with water and water transport through the world's oceans. And when you get into the communications piece of what we do every day, it's even higher when you look at the undersea domain, somewhere in the high 90s. So it's an important proposition that the Navy thinks about all the time. And as it thinks about what does it take to train and build capability and deploy and really to compete and win, at the global scale, which is what your Navy is designed to do. And if we look at this shift from power projection per se, like in the counterterrorism focus, to this maritime dominance or maritime presence role, the ability to be present, the ability to be to show agility and to operate in contested environments, and the ability to be in a distributed manner. And I on just about any given day now, in the vicinity, plus or minus 100 ships are deployed around the globe, establishing presence, doing the things that we talked about. And of course, the most priceless commodity in that are the men and women who operate these ships and are skilled to train them. So if we look at the enabling piece of this, and as we thought about why this topic is important, and when you operate away from centralized location to distributed locations, the supply chain piece of the business has to be right. And it has to be not only right about where you get the parts and how the parts get there, but it's the right part. And but at a national scale, I really suspect it's no different in business and even in the other service components, if you will. COVID taught us a lot. That last 9 months that I was in the job, and our supply chain topics were PPE and testing, to give us this mission assurance posture of our ships and their ability to deploy and sail on time and to meet our commitment to the American people. So the importance of this topic, whether it is this resilience piece and how do you maintain operationally proficient when you're in the face of a supply chain topic, and then the mobility piece of this really tie in to the importance of this. So, the Navy spends a lot of time thinking about its obligation of readiness. And, in the job that I just left, it was a lot about training and readiness and the importance of delivering on that promise to the American people. So, it was so the topic is very important, and I given an operational perspective, and I hope illuminates while we discuss the urgency of the topic, how we get in pursuit of getting better.
So fantastic. So there's been a lot of talk today about agility, effectiveness, doing the right thing, doing things right, lean, and efficiency. We know this from working inside the military and outside the military, being reservists and having our one foot in each door. But I have to ask you this: how do you know if an organization, or in this case, the Navy, is getting things right? What are the markers that you put out there to understand if we're getting this ecosystem right?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you used the word ecosystem, because that's exactly where my mind goes to. As a matter of fact, it was mentioned, and there's a lot of comments made today that really play into this topic. And so, David Hamilton, as you digest this, I think it's a great story to piece together these key components of the speakers. And it ties into a lot of the points that I certainly want to talk about as well. So what are the indicators we're getting it right? And I've often thought, when we go after something like this, it's not in a individual lane, an individual effort. Major General Sharpton talked about sort of this whole government approach, but it is an ecosystem. And I've always thought about, you're heading in the right direction when the ecosystem starts lining up, and then where does that ecosystem operate? And if I take it, clearly on the index of the Navy's strategy, it's an away game. The Navy doesn't exist to stay in port. It exists to operate with resiliency and do our nation's bidding wherever it's asked to go. In this away mindset construct. So, we got to be incredibly thoughtful about what's important in that ecosystem. And so sort of a way that I think about that ecosystem is, first and foremost, has to do with our people. And so you may think, well, is that really supply chain? Well, it certainly is in a talent management, and we'll talk about that perhaps a little bit later. But in the sense of those who consume a healthy supply chain system and those who consume an unhealthy supply chain system, understanding what those indicators are, and doing it in this very unique and sometimes austere operating environments like distributed maritime operations. So, so within the people, what are the markers? What do we see? And the way I think about it is, when you get into this concept that a lot of the individuals with, I guess, military backgrounds on the conference, and certainly those in industry who know about doing assessments, and how do you evaluate effectiveness? And so in this space, part of that ecosystem, if you're getting it right, I think is this mission effectiveness goes up, training effectiveness goes up, and we see our people bearing the fruit of these learnings as the environment becomes more and more austere. We have, like most organizations, a basic phase and an intermediate phase and an advanced phase of our training. And yes, we do plan. But when you get into operating forward and you think about where are those nodes that we would need to be replenished from, and do those nodes, have the right components, and do we have assurance those components have been in our hands from beginning to end? And then there are those components, if we get this focus on our people right, it's just such fantastic creativity that we have in our men and women, and the ability to do things like additive manufacturing. It's self creation of items, and we have a lot of work going along in that space. And as we think about getting product to the point of need, what does that really mean? So that's sort of like a marker that I would see as one component of that ecosystem. people are thinking this way, this effectiveness, and then we're thinking about these scenarios, and there is an individual raising their hand to say, hey, I have an idea, and it's listened to. So the
Right.
environment is right.
And you know how much, I'm kind of a John Boyd fanboy, the OODA loop, the people, process, and things in that order, coming from an agile coaching background where we focus on individuals and interactions over process and tools. I totally understand this. This is fantastic. You talked about leading indicators as well, assessments potentially. And that's one of the things we looked at when we engaged with industry, is really understanding how do we get the narratives, how do we capture that information, how do we know where things are going, what are the leading indicators to those great outcomes. But how do you see that working into the Navy right now with focusing on what we need to protect and potentially what is important in our nation's Navy?
Yeah, well, we sort of get into other parts of the ecosystem with these indicators and outcomes, and one is this collaboration piece with industry and how we think about that differently. Whether it's within agency or multi-agencies, and there's been a lot of great strides in this space with industry partners. How we do different programs, breaking barriers in this area. And one of the great leaders in the Navy has really pushed the Navy in this direction is former Secretary Hondo Gertz, and a lot of initiatives in that space. But the final piece of the ecosystem, I would say, as I think about it, is this IP covenant with industry partners. And then, so a lot of people think, we need to IP our chips and our high-end weapon systems, but there are things that are just as important in this endeavor, such as shipbuilding and maintenance on ships. It's truly remarkable the difference that we can make in our strategy, focusing on things like this national infrastructure to design and build and deploy the ships and give parts to the ships. So having a more sophisticated covenant with industry partners, and we set that up by having, this operating environment where we got this ecosystem, understanding why we got to get it right.
Fantastic. So we just have a few minutes left. We're going to wrap up here in about 5 or 4 minutes. So one thing you emphasized as the Chief of Navy Reserve was talent development. Why do you feel that was key? What drove you to do that?
Well, I suppose any leader, when they take over an organization, they have to figure out, where they're going to start and what they're going to focus on. And I've often thought that the most important part of transformation is what you decide to do first. And I wanted to focus on talent. And it wasn't just the right leader in the right job, because the Navy has a way to sort that out mostly. But this had to do with leveraging the talent. And you mentioned at the very beginning of this, a study that we did, and I led that on behalf of the Navy. And Nigel, it was one of the findings, you used the term earlier, but it's a psychological safety piece and the unlock that's created with a working force with psychological safety. And so with that, there was another element of this when I began looking at the reserve component of our national military forces. So I'm speaking to like all the component services in the Guard. We have to remember there's another component of that person in uniform that's in their civilian endeavor. And many of them are very credentialed in our nation's laboratories, and very credentialed in academics and in supply chain and technology, and leveraging that. So we thought we should catalog that talent and help us think through these critical components of what our force and what our nations could lever as another way to get after this resiliency and mobility to problem solving. And many of them could champion, even with their own companies, the importance of this IP, the importance of keeping the IP credentialed, and especially if they're in companies that are key providers to national defense. So I chose talent, and we made a lot of great strides, and we certainly saw through cataloging that the ability to lever that.
Fantastic. So I'm not sure if we'll be taking any questions here today, sir, but What a great way to end a fantastic Navy career. You know, I'm still in the Navy, so I did shave today a little bit. Looking forward to my next assignment, which is with the Defense Innovation Unit. And thank you for helping me out and getting that position there, sir. Really appreciate that. So I do agree. The fact that we have a foot in industry and a foot in the military, we bring a different perspective that others don't, especially the active duty force. I tell you, it's been a fantastic time networking with the other reservists that are out there doing similar work and finding reservists in every place from Toyota to Amazon to even Google. So it is a great honor to be doing what I'm doing. Let me just take a look at any questions up there. Do you have anything else you want to finish up with, sir?
Just to say again, just a humbled honor to sit here amongst all the great thought leaders on the forum here, and I look forward to learning and hearing more. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll turn it back over to David or Mitch.
Ponch, fantastic job. We really appreciate you, sir. And thanks to the Vice Admiral. Please thank you for me.